We're going to be looking at two-way tables. Let's take a look at the table first. I'll read the question, number 29. I'll read the question. So we have some information here. First, we have some subjects, math, science, history, writing. And then we also have some grades, ninth, 10th, 11th grade. So our information is in here. Like I said, we're talking about some grades and some subjects. Then I have on the outside totals. I see 189. How many people said math? Right, there were 54 ninth graders, 61 10th graders, 74 11th graders. So it's a total of 189. Then 127, how many people chose science, history, and writing? We can see those numbers. Now, my numbers at the bottom, what does that actually mean? What this 224, it is all the ninth grade. There were 54 ninth graders that chose math, 73 that chose science, 51 that chose history, and 46 that chose writing. So it's a total of 224. I see the total for 10th graders and 11th graders. Now this number, 579, is my total of all my students in this survey. Okay, so now we understand how to read these tables. Let's read the question and see what we're asked for here. So a random survey was conducted about students' favorite subject. Interesting subject. So it means students could only choose one. In your case, you might choose math as your favorite or another subject, but you could only choose one subject. Okay. The two-way table below displays the survey results, and we call it two-way because one side, one way, it gives us subjects. So I talked about the subject, so that's one way. And if I read the information on the top, it talks about grade levels. Grades, ninth grade, 10th grade, 11th grade. So we call it two-way because we're looking at two different things. Now, what is the probability? Okay, interesting. I'm gonna circle the word probability. What is the probability that a given student was in ninth grade and, oh, interesting, the word and, said writing was their favorite subject? Okay, because I'm using the word and, I'm going to have from my information that I'm checking, one of them has to deal with subject and the other one has to deal with grade. Okay, I'm not going to be able to pick the two things from the same side. So again, here, a ninth grade student. So I'm going to be looking at my ninth grade. I'm looking at this row. And writing, I'm looking at this row, and they happen to meet at 46. Right, at ninth grade over here, writing over here, they happen to meet at 46. Okay, so there were 46 ninth graders that chose writing. But here, I'm not asked for how many, I asked for probability. Okay, and then when I read the instructions at the end, it says round your answer to the nearest hundredth. Fine. What I'm going to do is 46, because there were 46 students that 46 ninth graders that chose writing, 46 over 579. 579 because there's 579 students all together. All right, so I'm gonna have, because I'm dealing with all the students, 579 at the bottom. On the top, 46 because that's where ninth grade writing, okay, met. So how many ninth graders chose writing? Now I'm just going to divide. I'm really just going to use my calculator. On Canvas, I gave you guys a calculator. Let me show you the calculator I gave you guys. On the left, we can see a thing of many things that we have there. One of these choices is calculator. Try to use this calculator. If you have one at home that you're familiar with, you want to use that, use it. But this is the calculator I use. So I'm going to come over, click on calculator. It's going to tell me you want to open a new tab. Yes, I'm going to open a new tab. So I'm just really going to go 46. My question was 46 divided by, it wrote it as a fraction because fraction means division. 46 divided by 579. And then I see the answer there, 0.0794473, bunch of numbers, right? Now, remember how my instruction said rounded to the nearest hundredth. Okay, so 100 sounds like the number 100, right? Let me come back to my homework here. Let me project the homework or our notes. 100th, remember the instructions, it says nearest 100th, which sounds like the number 100. Now the number 100 has two zeros, right? So my answer should have two decimal places. Decimal places means how many numbers after the decimal point. Now on my calculator right now, I just had that this was about 0.079. Like I said, there were more numbers. I wrote three decimal places. Even though my answer says round it to two decimal places, I do write three for right now. I do write three, and then I take a look at my third decimal number. In this case, 9. Because my number is big enough, right? Big enough is 5 or more. This 9 is going to push the previous number up. So my answer should be 0.08. Now, earlier I mentioned the word probability, right? Remember how I came in on our homework? Let me highlight it. On our homework, we had what is the probability? When I ask for probability, I'm basically telling you your answer is going to be a decimal place between 0 and 1. Very unlikely it's going to be 0 or 1. It could be very unlikely, but it's expect a number between 0 and 1. Like I said, it could be 0, 1, very unlikely. So I look at my answer, 0.08. Okay, makes sense. It's between 0 and 1, so it makes sense. All right, let's take a look at question number 30. By the way, today I'm going to be working questions 29 through 34. Okay, so a random survey was conducted about students' favorite subject. The two-way table below displays the survey results. Okay, pretty similar to question number 30. What is the probability? Oh, I just mentioned probability. So I'm expecting my answer to be a decimal between 0 and 1. Could be 0, could be 1, unlikely. More likely is going to be in between 0 and 1. Okay, so what is the probability that a given student was 11th grade and said history was their favorite subject? So I'm looking at my 11th graders. This is the information for 11th graders. This thing right here. History, I'm looking at history. This is my information for history. These two informations happen to meet at 26. So there were 26 11th graders that said history. So I'm just going to go 26 divided by 594. Okay, where does this 594 come from? Right there. That was a whole total in this survey. Different than previous question because it's a different question here. Okay, so I'm going to go 26 divided by 594. I use my calculator and it says 0.043. Again, I look at the first three decimal places. My answer is supposed to be rounded. I see it round your answer to the nearest hundredth. And again, 100 sounds like the number 100. It has two zeros, so I expected two decimal places. Okay, so looking at here, my third decimal place is a 3. Remember, decimal place is the third decimal place is the third number after the decimal point. Okay, so the third decimal place is 3, which is small. Remember, 4 or less, it's small. So the small numbers I ignore. So my answer will be 0.04. Pretty cool. Now do notice for questions 29 and 30, I was using the word and. Things change when we use the word or. So when I use the word and, notice that question number 29, ninth grade and writing had to meet at, in this case, 46. For question number 30, 11th grade and history, those two had to meet. So that's when we use the word and. It is a little different when we use the word or. So let's take a look at the word or. Let's take a look at number 31. A random survey was conducted about students' favorite subject. The two-way table below displays the survey results. What is the probability? So that just tells me my answer should be between 0 and 1 that a given student is in ninth grade or 11th grade. When I use the word or, I can get the two informations from grades, the two informations from subjects, or I can mix and match. So here I'm looking at ninth grade. So this is my information for ninth grade and 11th grade. They don't meet. Well, when I use the word or, they don't have to. Okay. So how many students are in ninth grade? There's 235 of them. What's the total of students in ninth grade? What's the total students in 11th grade? 82. So if I was to choose ninth grade and 11th grade to see how many there are total, in this case, I add these two numbers, 235 plus 82. I'm going to add those two numbers. In my result, I'm going to divide it by how many total students. In this case, I'm looking at 570. The calculator that just showed you earlier, you can just type it in like this, 235 plus 82 over 570. Let me show you guys really quick. Pretty cool calculator. Let me clear this all out. I want to write a fraction. So let me see here, click on a fraction. And on top of the fraction, I'm going to go 235 plus 82. I don't have to simplify that. And at the bottom, let me write 570. I press enter just there. So it gives me here. Oh, my answer, I see it right there. 0.556. Notice how I didn't have to combine 235 plus 82. I know 235 plus 82 is 317. 317 divided by 70. I didn't have to do that. My calculator does all the work. Cool. So let's come here. Let me come back to our notes. That's why I gave you this calculator. You just type it in, all that, and it gives me 0.556. Again, I look at the first three decimal places. I look at the third decimal place. It is big enough. Remember, five or more means big enough. So because it's big enough, it's going to push the previous number up. So instead of writing 0.55, let me write 0.56. Nice. Let's take a look at question number 32. A random survey was conducted about students' favorite subject. The two-way table below displays the survey results. What is the probability? So again, a number between 0 and 1, that a given student said writing or math was their favorite subject. I see something about writing. Here's the information about writing. I see the information about math. Because I'm using the word or, they don't have to meet. These two rows don't have to meet. And round your answer to the nearest hundred. Okay, 100 sounds like 100. So I expect my final answer to have two decimal places. Okay, so how many were there in math? There were a total of 181 students. Okay, so 181. How many were there in writing? In my case, 124. Okay, so I'm going to add those two values and divide it by, in this case, 610. And the 610 is how many they were all together. Okay, I'm just going to type it in. I don't have to solve 181 plus 124 equals 305. I don't have to find out that the top is simplified to 305. I'm going to use the calculator I gave you. I'm not going to show it on my screen, but I'm just going to use it here. I'm going to type it as I see this, 181 plus 124 all over 610, and it says 0.5. Well, I was supposed to have two decimal places, but I don't need any more, so it's just going to be 0.5. Good. If you guys write in 0.50 because you need to see your two decimal places, 0.5, 0.50 is the same thing. I'm just going to write 0.5, but if you need two decimal places, 0.50, then same thing. All right, let's take a look at the last two questions. Let me flip the page. I'm going to take a look at number 33. So a random survey was conducted about students' favorite subject. The two-way table below displays results. What is the probability? Okay. Again, expect a number between 0 and 1 that a given student said writing was their favorite subject and is in 10th grade. Ooh, again, I'm using the word and. So when I'm using the word and, these two things have to intersect. Writing and 10th grade have to meet somewhere. When I'm looking at my writing information, this is all writing. When I'm looking at 10th grade, this is it. Because I'm using the word and, I see they intersect, they cross at 30. So I'm gonna go 30 divided by 683. 683 because that's my whole total. I'm going to divide this. I'll use my calculator. 30 divided by 683 gives me 0.043. My third decimal number is too small, so I'm going to ignore it. Remember, small is 4 or less, so my answer is 0.04. Lastly, let me take a look at number 34. Very important question. This might sound tricky, but I'm going to show you guys in a minute. Random survey was conducted about students' favorite subject. The two-way table below displays the survey results. What is the probability? So again, my answer between 0 and 1 could be 0, could be 1, unlikely, but it could be. But so that what is the probability that a given student said science was their favorite subject and history was their favorite subject? Because I'm using the word and, they have to intersect. So I'm looking at science and history. Oh, they don't intersect. I'm using the word and. So how many chose science and history? Well, technically, when they said favorite subject, they only chose one, right? They only chose one class. Here it's telling me how many of these students that only chose one class said science and history. And they don't intersect. Well, in this case, zero. Yeah, they only chose one class. When you think of it logically, they only said one class. So said, okay, if they choose one class, how many of them chose two? Right? When you think of it logically, like, ah, yeah, it was zero. When we're using the word and, let's let a review question number 33, they have to intersect. If they don't, then my answer will be zero.